Hi everybody, welcome to the Evangelist Nick Garrett channel. I'm really excited to talk to you about today's video. Why Constantine became a Christian. First, who is Constantine? Well, he was a very famous Roman emperor in the early to mid 300s AD. And he was the first one to bring Christianity into mainstream acceptance through the support of the state and his personal actions via faith. He was the emperor that presided at the First Council of Nicaea. He was well loved by Romans and came to be well loved by Christians. But why is he so controversial in our time? If you talk to modern Christians who are Protestant and confessional, they'll tell you that Constantine was this bad guy who had passed on the mystery religions from ancient Babylon, engaged in sun worship, and purposely commandeered Christianity to make it a new vessel for these pagan ideas. But is that true? Do we find it in the narrative, evidentiary, historical sources? We're going to find that out and more. But first, you have to know something. What we know about Constantine today is unfortunately very skewed in the mainstream. We know him most readily nowadays by books by Dan Brown, The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, and they were made into movies. And as a result, people believe that Constantine came to Nicaea, twisted and cajoled arms, made up the Trinity, made up the Bible. The list of accusations is endless. And some people aren't going to like to hear it, but many of them are proven false by the narrative evidence. Some of them might be upheld. I guess we'll have to see. So, who was Constantine? During the late 280s, 90s, and early 300s, he was in Britannia. In the time before Constantine, emperors had discovered that for the Roman Empire to survive and continue to thrive by occupation and resource gathering and bringing more people into the empire, they had to move north to the island of Britain. Slowly but steadily, they got a foothold and they had decades and generations of wars on that island. Well, Constantine had been there as a military leader. He was very well loved by his soldiers. At the same time around Rome, Diocletian had passed away, and there was a period where several people vied for the throne at once. Well, Constantine was among them. He weighed his options. He considered what he should do. But ultimately, he didn't make a move yet, until he heard that the people on the throne were oppressing the people, killing them, murdering them, sending them into slavery. So Constantine comes south from Britain and allies with the person who was made emperor in the eastern part of the empire, Licinius. He wins at the great battle called Milvian Bridge. One of the important facts leading up to the battle that we learn about from no other than Socrates himself, Socrates Scholasticus. After Eusebius's church history, which covers the periods in the early to mid 300s, we find Socrates writing in the second quarter of the 400s, which would be the 5th century. He not only encapsulates what Eusebius wrote, but he adds to it with more detail and a different writing style. We owe a lot to a field called prosopography for helping us to understand this. But let me tell you a little bit about what Socrates points out that is crucial for us to know during our conversation. At the time, it wasn't uncommon for Roman leaders going into battle to choose a god that they were going to honor or portray during the battle. Well, Constantine had noticed that his father, who had been a very successful man in his own right, had never done any such thing. So Constantine, in weighing who he would go into battle with, has this experience at Milvian Bridge on the way to the battle, where he sees the sign of the cross emblazoned in the sun, and Jesus telling him, "In this sign you will conquer." That is further confirmed in a dream he has. So the cross becomes a coat of arms, if you will, for Constantine and his soldiers. And they are heavily victorious, and he becomes emperor, and he is well loved. Almost immediately, a controversy arises out of a little debate that happened in a far-flung part of the empire between Alexander of Alexandria and Arius, a presbyter, who challenged him on debate issues. Specifically, he accused Alexander of holding Sabellian, non-Trinitarian views and challenged him on the co-eternality and co-equality of God. So, Alexander, defending himself, starts writing letters all over the empire, and this becomes a major issue for Constantine. So after he has taken office, after he has passed an edict of religious equality, he does this. He finds out Licinius, the emperor in the east, is oppressing Christians in secret, contrary to the treaty they had made. He goes to war with Licinius. He defeats Licinius. He becomes the emperor of the whole Roman Empire. Because Constantine had been unable to decide what god to go into battle with, and then he had this Christian experience, he went into battle, fighting the battle for and wearing the mantle of the Christians. Well, this was a game changer. And after the defeat of Licinius, he saw no other option than the bishops in his ear saying, we need to do something about this controversy between Alexander and Arius because it's going all over the empire. He calls for the First Council of Nicaea. It's important to note that before he does, though, he had already been honored by Licinius in the east. And when Licinius went, he and his soldiers destroyed pagan temples in Rome along the way and refused to participate in key pagan events and ceremonies. This is in the documentation of both Eusebius of Nicomedia, the church historian, and we find it echoed in Socrates. Now, Constantine, having embraced Christianity himself, took a profession. He started rebuilding the churches and enriching them with splendid offerings. We know he did this, and we can go to another source to verify it. The Liber Pontificalis. If you go to it and you look up Pope Sylvester, which they list as the 34th Bishop of Rome, you will then see 30 or 40 pages under his bishopric. Constantine enriched the church with list after list of properties that the Christians would now own and accoutrements to fill those properties for worship with gold, silver, glass, ornate architecture. And this was all happening for the first time in the faith. Before this, Christianity had been a sectarian religion where most of the Roman people were indifferent to the Christians. They essentially viewed them as that kind of weird Jewish cult that has that halfway cannibalistic view about them. Well, that changed when it became fashionable for the higher-ups in Rome to become Christians, because it was an intellectually challenging idea. And it was because most pagan religions, you have to understand, going all the way back to the beginning of time, centered around worshiping things of creation that were not understood. The sun, the moon, weather, seasons and patterns. Maybe if we pray harder to whatever it is bringing this thunder and rain, our crops will grow better. That's why pagan idolatry tends to idolize things like the bull or the goat. These are farming animals that help produce and till the land, or things of that nature. Well, Constantine is picking a religion that has been debated now for 400 years up to his time, in a variety of sources among the smartest philosophers of that time. This is further verified by Socrates Scholasticus. So whether one likes to face this fact or not, Constantine essentially structured Christianity, funded it, supported it, helped it to grow financially and politically, made it a more viable option for the everyday Roman people. And on top of that, this is often what's viewed in a negative light by Protestant Christianity. But it's anachronistic. This wasn't necessarily viewed this way during the time. We view it this way now with some type of resentment toward Constantine and his actions. We have to remember, we view it that way because of what the Roman Catholic Church became during the Italian Renaissance prior to the Protestant Reformation. It became greedy and driven by corruption. Well, that wasn't the intention of Constantine necessarily. Anyway, one of the negative things that occurred as a result of what was done there with Constantine and his work with the church and the Bishop of Rome and establishing all these properties was this. Groups of Christians who had always practiced Christianity their own ways, slightly different from what finally became orthodoxy during the 300s and 400s, were hunted down and charged as heretics and excommunicated from the church. This led to a whole new series of arguments. Any non-Trinitarian sects were eventually tossed out. This didn't mean they stopped existing, and it doesn't mean they stopped self-identifying as Christians. So this view we have today, I think, unfortunately, is that if something was called a heresy, we can just go, oh, that was a heresy, and mark it off, not look at it, and not think about it. But that's not accurate. A heretic and the sect of heretics continue to practice Christianity the way they believe it goes, and there is certainly historical evidence that this makes sense and that that is what people would do. Anyway, so Constantine, a bad guy? No. A politician? Absolutely. Do we see any problems with his motives? Well, remember, he only came down from Britannia after already being named emperor by his own people. He only came down after he heard about the Great Oppressions taking place. He made an agreement to co-rule with Licinius, and those agreements were only broken when Licinius in secret continued to persecute Christians. If it weren't for Constantine and his work, it is highly possible that much of what we have from Christian antiquity would not exist today. So, in order to properly understand Constantine and put him in the right context, we cannot think of him in the post-Reformation view of we should automatically hate this guy because he started the Roman Catholic Church. I don't think we can do that. If you watch a lot of my other videos, you'll get the sense that I believe the modern Catholic Church stems from the councils of Lyon in the late 1100s and early 1200s, the Council of Trent in the 1540s and 50s, and the Second Vatican Council. Those are all with the exception of the Council of Lyon, which is quite old, and if Catholicism can find some rooting in there, that in itself is exceptional. Anything before that cannot be viewed through the lens of the modern Roman Catholic Church, its disputes and differences in doctrine from any type of Protestantism. It just wouldn't be accurate or fair to do that. Anyway, my friends, fascinating subject matter. We have some other videos coming out this week that piggyback and tie into this. I also found out more information in my study on the Eusebius conspiracy, which I expect to address soon. Listen, if you can, please support us a little bit via PayPal. Just click on the link in the video description. It's quite easy to do. Even $1 helps. Just do what you can. If you feel like we're worthy of a portion of maybe what you would tithe, I'm just going to ask you to pray about it and do that. We also have Venmo and Cash App. You can also just purchase a book we've written from Amazon.com/author/NicholasGarrett. Get one of the books from the Just Tell Me the Truth About Christianity series. Or my newer book, Shipwrecked in the Land of King Tobacco, the first Washington family immigrant to America. Check out our cups and shirts on Teespring. You can also support us just by continuing to watch the channel, like the videos, share them, and comment. Get the discussion going. Finally, if you'd like to become a channel member, simply click join for one of 3 levels. Join us as a deacon, an archbishop, or a crusader. 3 different levels, 3 different levels of perks. Thank you all, friends, so much. God bless you, and may your work today bear fruit.